Hi there and welcome to Thursdays with Annette. So glad you're joining us because today it's all about soups. That's right, it's winter time and what a perfect time to be looking at how to make some really healthy homemade soups that take little time at all. So today's recipe is the asparagus and cream corn soup or sweet corn soup, and it's out of book 2. This is the book here. Book 2, one of my favourites. I've got 8 of them. And there's the recipe there. So you've got the asparagus and sweet corn soup. Now, before we get into that though, we had some very excited winners from last week's show. And we had 3 fantastic ladies, Lisa Morellis, Chrissy Ann Forbes, and Shannon Robinson, all won a personally signed copy of book 5. Now, actually, when Shannon emailed back with her very excited, thank you, I'm excited to win the book, she actually told me that her little 10-year-old daughter, Sasha, had actually watched the show last week, Making the Curry in a Hurry, and made it for dinner for the family. So well done, Sasha. And actually, you know, how lucky that you actually got to win a book as well. So you were destined for that recipe for sure. Now, as I said, asparagus and sweet corn soup, book 2. Now, why did I pick this? Well, straight up, I've got to tell you, I am a huge fan of soups. Love, love, love. I have soup nearly every day practically. I just love it. And so does Billy, thank goodness. But I wanted to show you the simplest soup you could make. I mean, like last week, everyone was so excited because the curry in a hurry is so easy as well. So I thought, let's keep rolling on that simple ideas. And so let's look at the ingredients and you'll see that basically all I have to do is very little to make this a fabulous homemade soup. So first of all, we start with, we need a cup of onion. So I'm going to dice that in a second. You need some Floralite margarine, some plain flour, some vegetable stock powder. And if you don't have vegetable, you can use whatever you've got, really, it won't matter. And then we're going to use the cream corn, the cans of cream corn, frozen corn kernels, some evaporated milk and a little bit of pepper. And also we need 5 cups of water. Now today's recipe, the asparagus and sweet corn soup, in the variations I tell you, you can use fresh asparagus if you want. Now normally in the recipe it says 2 cans of the big cans of the canned asparagus tips and cuts. Now asparagus are in season, $2 a bunch. I'm using fresh, and I also like it because it's a little bit lower in sodium as well, so for people with diabetes that's a better option for you. So that's why I'm doing it with the fresh today. But you can use the canned. So basically all you have to do to make this recipe, let's have a drum roll please, you chop an onion. Yeah, I mean I'm lashing out because I'm chopping up asparagus as well. That's how hard this recipe is. So you want diced onion, and we want a cup. This is a brown onion I'm using. And the key to having less tears in the eyes is a sharp knife. That really will help. So we just want it, not big chunks of onion because it's a soup. You want it diced. And then we'll just do the other half. And I just think, homemade soup, there's nothing better. And when you see how easy this is to make, if you're saying, oh, I don't have the time, too much work, because let's be honest, some soups really do take a bit of time. You've got lots of vegetables to chop up, and I get that. But this recipe, all we want is a cup of onion. Here we go. Get rid of that. Now what I'm going to do, and if you notice underneath my board, I've got a sponge, a wet sponge, and that's because it stops it from moving. I know, there's tip 1 for you for today's show. All right, so now we've got our asparagus. Now, what you need to do with the asparagus is cut off the woody bit, and it's probably about 3 centimetres. Now you don't want to use it because it's woody. It's not, it's tough. It's not something that you want in your dish. So now what I'm going to do is chop them into a couple of centimetres. It tells you in the recipe. I'll put them here ready to put in later. And as I said, they're in season at the moment, and this is such a simple recipe that I think you're gonna wanna make it. All right, so there's my asparagus done, my onion done. Hello, asparagus and sweet corn soup. We are organised. So let's put that over there and get rid of this. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cook it. Right, so I'm going to use the electric wok because this way you get to actually see it. In the recipe I say to use a boiler, but you really don't, you know, it's a bit high, you wouldn't get to see anything in it. So hopefully you get to see a little bit of the soup in here. So first of all we start with the butter, or the Flora-Lite margarine of course, so we melt that. And I throw in the onion at this point. So I want to melt this first. Where's my little turtle? All right, so the idea is that when you're making soups, you know, there's little tricks along the way that make a difference to the fat count. Now, this particular recipe, it's in book 2, as I said, and it has 2.9 grams of fat a serve, which is fabulous. And if you note, there's another variation, not only just with the fresh asparagus, but you can also add chicken. So you could put in 300 grams of skinless chicken breast, and you've then got asparagus and chicken sweet corn soup. All right, so we're just going to cook the onion for just a couple of minutes with the margarine. Now this is the thing, you know, I've actually written 9 tips for you that I'm going to share with you as we go on the show, because I really want to excite you about cooking soup. So just remember to stay for the whole show, because not only are you going to see how to make a really good soup, but I'm also going to give you some tips later on. All right, so we've cooked that for a couple of minutes. This is when you add the plain flour in, and this will help thicken the soup up a little bit. But you need to cook the flour off just for a minute, 30 seconds or so. There we go. Just take that roughage of the flour out. Now this is the thing. What did I have to do to prepare this? I chopped an onion, that's right. And the rest is opening cans and frozen corn. So this is why I say to you, is this a hard soup? No, it's not. All right, so now we're going to put in, just put it in a little bit slowly so that the flour can blend in with the water. That's it. Perfect. And now we're going to add in the rest of the water, so it's 5 cups of water, because this is enough for 10 serves, so it's a good batch of soup. All right, so let me move this over into the sink. Okay. All right, so now what we're going to do next is just basically add ingredients. I know, that's how hard it is. We want 2 teaspoons of the stock powder. Cool. And the cream corn goes next. So just open a can. I mean, that's not hard, is it? I mean, we don't need many cooking skills for this recipe, I can tell you. And now we're going to just add that in to the mix. I love cream corn. As a kid, I've always loved it. I love it over a jacket potato with some frozen corn and, you know, a bit of bacon in it as well. You've got a great filling to go over a jacket potato. Perfect. Now we just throw that out and let's just give it a mix up. Oh my gosh. It is such a yum soup. You have to make it. Please do. Remember, it's out of book 2. All right, now I'm going to add the frozen corn in. And this is when I add the asparagus in. There you go. All right, so basically we now just have to let this come to the boil. Oh my gosh, I love the yellow and green look, it's fabulous. So basically we just want it to bring to the boil and boil it for about 10 minutes, and that way you just let it reduce down. Now the key is that you don't put a lid on this soup, and that way it will help reduce the liquid down. And just stir it every now and then. I'll just move that forward a little bit. So just every now and then give it a stir. I know I'll have to turn it down as it starts to boil because you don't want it on full boil the whole time, so reduce it down to a slow boil, and there you go. So we've done all of that. Now let's talk about how you can make soup your best friend when you're losing weight. Now, one of the things that I love about soup is that you can really, if I'd use tip 1 for example for you, number 1, is you could use all your lackluster veggies. You know, like when you've got your celery and carrots looking really limp because you haven't used them up. Any type of vegetables, just chop them up and put them in a soup, because you can just instantly make a vegetable soup out of it, whatever you've got. You know, this is a great way just to use up whatever's going sad in your crisper at home and make a soup. Why not? And also when you've got the chicken bones, or even if you've got a ham bone, then use that in a soup as well, because that can really build up the flavours as well. And even if you say, well, Christmas time, for example, I know let's not talk Christmas, but often we have a leg ham at Christmas time. And you think, well, okay, what am I going to do with the bone? Well, freeze it. Freeze it in, and then when you come into winter and you're thinking, oh, gee, it'd be really good to have a ham and, what is it called? Ham and pea soup, which I have a recipe for, by the way. You can use that for that. So perfect. So we're getting a little bit of bubble here. As I say, just give it a stir every now and then. Now my second tip is there's lots of things you can add to a soup to make it a little bit more heartier and get a better texture to it instead of it being really runny. And that's by adding kidney beans, lentils, barley is one of my favourites in a soup, or even rice. And what it does is it bulks up the soup and as I said, it gives it a thicker, heartier texture. But be careful when you add rice, because you'd be surprised adding just a little bit of rice can actually make quite a volume in the soup, and it can suck up all the liquids if you're not careful. Now my third tip for soups is really think about what meats you're going to use in it. So always really lean, mince, you want the leanest mince, skinless chicken, breasts of course, and this way you'll keep that fat count really low, which is important when you're thinking healthy and losing weight. Now, the key is to remove that excess skin, the fat, or skins off the meats, and that way then it'll keep it nice and healthy. But, can you remember back in the days when your mum used to make soup and it'd be in the fridge and you'd crack the top of the fat to get to the soup because it'd be so fatty. Well, we don't really want that to happen with our soups, but even still, if you see a little bit of fat that's on the top, just scoop it off, because we don't want it in the soup. Now, number 4 tip is when you're eating out and you think, oh look, I'm really being healthy, I'll have a soup for lunch, especially because this is winter time, so we really want hearty, sort of warming food. And you think, well, I'll order the cream of chicken soup. No! Anything that says the word creamy in front of it, don't do it. Because what's happening is the chef is, pretty well putting cream in that soup. Yes, it might make it really, to the chef, it's all, part of the way they've been educated. But for me, I don't want a creamy soup. I don't want cream. So I always ask, even if it doesn't say creamy, I go, is there cream in this? Because pumpkin soup is another one. You think pumpkin, can you go wrong on that? Well, yes, chefs can love to add cream to things, and it really can then make it a very high fat option for you. So we don't want that, okay? So just remember that. Now, my 5th tip is, like as I've said, I'm using the wok today, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can use that if you want to do it. But in the recipe, I say to use a good quality boiler. Because what happens, this will, if by a good quality one, it means that, you won't get a lot of things burning or sticking or scorching on the base. Now, I've shown you my boiler because I'm not using it today, but this is what I would have used if I was doing it the normal way. And notice it has a lid. You definitely want a lid. But this is the normal size boiler, so you can see it's quite deep. And the base is solid. It's got a really good base to it. So spend a little bit of money on your boiler, because I think that's really important. Let me just turn this soup down a little bit. Yeah, because you get what you pay for when it comes to pots and pans. So that's a boiler, because I remember someone said to me, what is a boiler in that? And I went, oh, well, I better show you guys. And can I just say that I was a little bit impressed with the dietitian tip. So when you read it, this is the asparagus and sweetcorn soup. Difficulty rating 1, hello, because I mean you just chop an onion really. And what Lisa said here, the dietitian, have this soup with a slice of multigrain bread for lunch or dinner. The meal is low in fat, high in fibre, and the glycemic index is low, making this an ideal choice for people with diabetes. Yeah, so everyone is a winner. Alrighty, so just turn that down a little bit more. Oh, it smells so good and looks with the green and the yellow, it's just so yum. Alright, so give it a stir every now and then. Okay, now tip 6, canned and packaged soup mixes. You know, look, we don't always have time to make homemade soup. No, you do. How long is this going to take to cook, please? But if you feel like, oh, I haven't got time, then, you know, be careful of those packaged and canned soups because they can be really high in salt or sodium. So check your label on the nutritional panel and see what salt's in it, but also check the fat count because, you know, once again, pumpkin's really one that you've got to be careful with because it can actually be quite high in fat depending on what they put in with the pumpkin, because pumpkin has really no fat at all, but it's what they add in. So that's tip 6. Now, tip 7, I mean, as I said, I love homemade soup. Love, love, love it. You know, it's just, to me, love in a bowl. And, I mean, so much cheaper to make than buying soup. I mean, you know, you can go into the supermarket now and they've got pre-packaged packs now. They're $5 for a bag for one serve. I mean, crazy. That's just way too expensive. But do you know what I love about homemade soup or anything that's homemade? It's really something nurturing about serving homemade soup to family and friends. I mean, it's just, people are impressed with you and you say, oh, no, I made that soup. But you don't have to tell them that all you did was chop up an onion and today I just chopped up asparagus. You could just open a can of asparagus. I know, it'll be our secret, okay? I won't tell anyone. No, tip 8, you know, if you live on your own, now this is something that you've got to think about, like, because it's just me and Billy here, but if you live on your own and you think, oh my gosh, Annette, what am I going to do with this whole big pot of soup? Hello, it's just me. Well, be happy because in the new book, you know, Cooking for One or Two, fabulous, there's actually 5 soups in there, which makes a much smaller batch. So you're welcome. But in there as well, I've got a creamy roasted vegetable soup, and it's a new recipe, and what you do is you roast your veggies up and you blend it up and make a soup out of it. I know, it's fabulous. And if you're unsure of if you've got a recipe there that you think, well, I don't like asparagus and corn in it, I have 23 soup recipes, yes, in all my books, because you can tell I love my soup, so to me it's a really good thing to have homemade soup recipes. So you're welcome, I've got you covered. Now, the other thing, if you're at home on your own or just cooking for 2 or you're just whatever, you can freeze soup. Now, like you can put them into single containers. Diane does this all the time. She brings her little containers in and they're frozen and she sits them on the bench and they defrost, you know, till lunchtime. It's a great way to have a really healthy lunch, but also imagine the money you're going to save by just taking a piece of bread with you and toast it and you've got your soup for lunch instead of having to go and buy it. Now, what I suggest though when you're making your soups and you want to freeze them is make sure you label the container, because you might look at it and go, gosh, what is that? I remember one time I wanted a soup and I actually defrosted ratatouille, and it was certainly not what I wanted for what I was wanting a soup. So just make sure you write on it what it is and what date. Now with the milky ones, because I'm going to actually in a minute, I'm going to add in the evaporated light milk, you can freeze them for about 2 or 3 weeks. No longer, because the milk can separate when it's frozen for a while. And if it's not got milk in it, because a lot of the soups don't, then you can freeze it actually up to probably about 6 months. You know, it really is one of those things. All right, so now my soup's looking pretty good. I think we're pretty close to the 10-minute mark. But before I add the evaporated milk, I'll just cook it a little bit longer. I just want to think about who hasn't won a prize yet. So in the comments, I want you to write something. So let me talk about it. We're going to do giveaway book 2 this week, 3 lucky winners. If you've never won, I'm going to pick somebody that's never won a book before. Okay, so in the comments, you're going to, you like, you share, and then in the comments, you write down hashtag simply too good. Now you know that, but I want you to write down, what can we say? That haven't won? Just put I haven't won. And that way then I'm going to pick one of you that writes that in. How about that? I haven't won. So we'll make you a winner, hopefully. So that's for next week, and I'm excited for you to win that one. Now, talking about next week, I'm not going to be in the kitchen next week. I'm actually going to be doing a topic which I think is really important because we're going into school holidays, and it's going to be about healthy road trips. Because I can remember the old Annette at 100 kilos. I mean, I didn't pack healthy snacks on the road, and we'd go through blocks of chocolates and bags of minties and all this sort of stuff, and then all the drive-throughs that you go through and all that sort of stuff. So let's have some healthy solutions for road trips. So that's next week. I'm excited. And it's not too late if you want to join my mentoring program, because we're doing a winter challenge right now, and it's going off. There's people that are bragging already about how much they're losing. So if you're interested in joining up, as I said, it's not too late. Go to simplytoogood.com.au/membership and you can join up. Fantastic. Don't miss it. And I think, Diane, you're going to put it in the comments. Thank you, Diane. That's perfect. All right, so let's finish the soup off. I mean, what did I have to do? Nothing. Just chop an onion. And you can buy frozen onion. Remember that. So I'm going to add in the evaporated milk because this will give it a nice creamy texture. Perfect. And let's do a little bit of cracked pepper in there. Love that. Bring it to the boil. This is asparagus and sweetcorn soup from book 2. I know. It's one of the easiest recipes, and we can say that about nearly all my recipes, really. I mean, who knew weight loss could be so deliciously healthy? I mean, here's a beautiful homemade soup that's caused me no heartache whatsoever. I mean, there are some recipes where you chop for hours with all the different veggies that go in it. So if you basically want something quick, easy, but hearty and fabulous, this is the one for you. So let's serve it up. I've got my wholemeal toast ready to go. So, you've as the dietitian said, multigrain or wholemeal is perfect. Let's just pour the soup in now. My fabulous recipe for today. Let me move it back a bit further. Let me just put my spoon in there. I'm ready to go. Thank you very much. There's soup. It's a wonderful recipe. I mean, I am excited to be able to cook for you and show you how you can live your life as a healthy person and not miss out. So there you go. So I will see you next week when we're talking about those road trips. Fantastic. And remember, if you want to win the book, you've got to write in there, haven't won yet, and hopefully you will. All right, bye now, guys.